The following events are based on a true story. Names and details have been altered to protect the identities of those involved, but the horror remains untouched. Watch at your own risk. Story 1. Location: Empire State Building, Manhattan, New York City. The elevator opens by itself at 3:17 a.m. Every night, I never believed in haunted places. Working night shifts in one of the most famous buildings in the world sort of kills that kind of fantasy. The Empire State Building is too full of lights, tourists, and overworked security personnel to feel eerie. At least, that's what I used to think. My name's Carlos, and I've been the midnight doorman here for almost 4 years now. You learn to ignore a lot. The creaking pipes, echoing footsteps, flickering lights. But last month, something started happening that I couldn't ignore. It was the freight elevator on the 38th floor. It started opening by itself. Always at 3:17 a.m., on the dot, every single night. The doors would slide open with that mechanical hiss, but no one was there. Just a puddle of water, thin, wet footprints trailing outward onto the concrete. I figured it was a glitch. Maybe someone left a mop bucket, maybe a leak. But the precision of it? The way the elevator opened like it was expecting someone. It started to get under my skin. At first, I did what anyone in my position would do. I reported it. Maintenance came up, checked the wiring, inspected the sensors, even replaced the control panel just in case. For a couple of nights, it stopped. I almost convinced myself it had been fixed. Just a harmless quirk in a 90-year-old building. But then 5 days later, 3:17 a.m. sharp, the freight elevator opened again. I was watching the monitors when it happened. This time, the wet prints were there before the doors even fully parted, as if someone had been waiting on the inside. I told myself I was being dramatic. I didn't want to be that guy, the paranoid one who sees ghosts in everything. Still, something about it felt wrong. The prints didn't match a mop or shoes. They were bare feet, small, delicate, too precise to be accidental. And they always stopped the same way, right in front of the hallway camera, just out of frame. Like whoever, or whatever it was, knew exactly where the blind spot was. I started staying later than I needed to, pretending to double-check locks or run inventory. Really, I just wanted to see it with my own eyes. It happened again the next night. I was standing right at the end of the hall, maybe 30 feet from the elevator when the doors opened. Same sound, same empty interior, same trail of wet footprints, only this time, I swear I felt a breeze come out of it. Cold and damp, like something had followed me out of a walk-in freezer. That's when I decided to record it. I propped my phone against the supply cart, aimed it at the elevator, and stepped back. I didn't expect much. Maybe some glitch I could show management so they'd take it more seriously. But when I watched the footage the next morning, my hands went numb. The video showed the elevator opening right on time, no one inside. But in the reflection on the elevator wall, there was a figure, a woman. She was standing with her back to the camera, long dark hair hanging past her shoulders, head slightly tilted, as if she was listening. I replayed that clip over and over. There was no one physically there, just the reflection. I even went back to the hallway at the same time the next night, phone ready, heart hammering. The elevator opened again. Same emptiness, same footprints. But this time I didn't record. I couldn't. I felt watched. Not like someone standing behind you, but like something already inside the walls. The silence felt thick, charged, like the moment before a thunderclap. I backed away and told myself I'd just imagined the reflection. It had to be a trick of the light. But that night when I got home, my phone buzzed. One new video. No sender, just the file. I opened it, and it was my footage, the one I'd deleted, but it was longer now. After the doors open, the reflection slowly turns her head, just slightly, until I can see half her face in the mirror. Pale, smiling, eyes like static, flat, gray, buzzing with something I can't describe. I dropped the phone. Didn't even pick it up off the floor until morning. I didn't go to work the next night, called in sick. I spent hours trying to convince myself it was some kind of prank, deep-fake tech, maybe a sick joke from a coworker. But when I finally returned 2 days later, no one had touched the cameras. No one knew anything. I asked around casually, but most of the guys on night duty just shrugged it off. Old building stuff, one of them said. Ghost stories keep the rats away. But the freight elevator? They avoided it. Wouldn't say it outright, but I could tell. No one liked talking about that floor after dark. That night, I made a choice I regret. I waited by the elevator. This time I got inside before 3:17. The idea was to see where it had been going. If the doors opened on their own, I'd be there to see if someone was calling it from another floor. I stood there, alone, heart pounding, watching. The numbers flicker above the doors. Then the clock struck 3:17. The lights dimmed slightly, and the doors wouldn't open. I hit the open button. Nothing. Pressed every floor. Nothing. The lights inside the cab began to flicker, slow and deliberate like a heartbeat. Then I heard it, breathing, not mine, soft, wet, labored, coming from behind me. I turned slowly, and for a split second I saw her reflection again in the steel paneling. Closer now, still facing away, but her head was tilted so far to the side it looked broken. Her hair moved, though the air inside was still. I backed into the corner, fists clenched, whispering prayers I hadn't said since I was a kid. Suddenly, the elevator jolted and the doors opened. I staggered out onto the 38th floor, drenched in sweat, no footprints, no sign of her. But when I turned back to look at the elevator, the inside panel still showed the number 317, glowing bright red, like it had burned itself into the system. I've never stepped inside that elevator again. But every night since, I check the hallway camera just to be sure. And every night, without fail, the doors open. No one inside, just the reflection. I don't expect anyone to believe me. But if you ever find yourself in the Empire State Building after hours, don't take the freight elevator. And if you do, never look into the reflection. I still don't know what she is, or why she shows herself at exactly 3:17 a.m. But I think she sees me now, and I'm starting to wonder if one night the elevator won't open for me at all. If anyone's experienced something like this, please tell me I'm not alone. The following events are based on a true story. Names and details have been altered to protect the identities of those involved, but the horror remains untouched. Watch at your own risk. Story 2. Location: Wrigley Field, Chicago, Illinois. Something walks the field at 4:44 a.m. I used to love the silence at Wrigley. That vast, echoing quiet after midnight had a weight to it. Sacred, almost. When the crowds were gone, when even the echo of the last beer cup hitting the ground had faded, I felt like the last man on earth, tending to a forgotten temple. I've worked here for 26 years. I've seen bats flutter across the lights, snow drift in through the upper decks, even a lost fan asleep in the bleachers once. But what I saw last Thursday morning wasn't an accident. It was something that didn't belong to this world, or maybe something that never left. It started with the grass. Perfect grass. That's what Wrigley's known for. And it's my pride. Every night I do one last walkthrough around 3:30 a.m. after the last sweep and before the grounds go dark. But last month I started noticing it. Deep, uneven impressions near the infield. Always in the same direction, and always there after 4:44 a.m. I checked the cameras. Nothing. Just static between 4:40 and 4:46. Thought it was a glitch. Maintenance said the same, but the marks were real, like something was dragging itself across the field, or dragging something else. So 3 nights ago, I decided to stay late. Not just late, all night. I told the security office I had inventory to finish, brought a thermos of coffee and a blanket, and climbed up to the second tier of the stands. From up there, I had a clear view of the entire field. I picked a seat deep in the shadows where the motion detectors wouldn't catch me. I didn't move. I barely breathed. The wind shifted once around 4:20 a.m., carrying with it a strange metallic scent, like rust and cold sweat. It made my stomach twist. I almost left. I wish I had. At exactly 4:44 a.m., the field lights flickered. Just for a second. Long enough for every shadow in the stadium to stretch like something waking up. And then I heard it. A sound I'll never forget. Not footsteps, not wheels. It was something being dragged. Slow, heavy, scraping across concrete and metal, echoing through the empty rows. I froze. The sound wasn't coming from the field. It was coming from the stands, my level, just a few sections over. Whatever it was moving toward the field, toward that old sealed-off dugout no one uses anymore. I couldn't see it at first, just the sound getting closer, a rhythm to it, like something with weight being pulled step by dragging step. Then it emerged from behind the aisle, a shape, tall and hunched, silhouetted against the dim emergency lights. It didn't walk. It shifted, like its joints weren't in the right places, like it had to think about how to move each limb, and it was dragging something long and wrapped in what looked like a tarp or heavy cloth, the edges frayed and darkened as if stained. The cloth caught on the edge of a seat, and I heard a low, wet tear. I think that was the moment I realized I was holding my breath. The figure made its way down toward the field with an eerie sense of purpose, never hesitating, never stopping. It didn't look around, didn't check for cameras. It just knew where it was going, knew no one would be watching except me. I should have moved, run, but I was paralyzed, rooted in that cold plastic seat like part of the structure. The thing didn't make a sound other than the dragging. No breath, no muttering, just the steady scrape of something heavy being pulled down concrete steps. And every step brought it closer to that old dugout, the one no one talks about, the one that's supposed to be sealed shut since the 80s. When it reached the edge of the field, the figure stopped. It stood there, motionless, like it was listening. The tarp shifted slightly, and I swear something inside it moved. A twitch, or maybe just my mind trying to make sense of it. Then, without looking, it raised one arm and pointed directly at the old dugout. I watched as the doors that had been padlocked and rusted shut for decades, creaked open on their own. Not violently, just opened, like they were expecting it. The figure dragged the tarp-covered shape across the grass, and the moment it touched the field, the grass withered beneath it. Just a thin, dark trail stretching from the stands to that rotting threshold. The whole time, the stadium was dead, quiet. Not even the usual hum of the transformers. No birds, no wind, no traffic from Clark Street. Just silence. I don't know how long I watched. It felt like hours, but it couldn't have been more than minutes. When the figure reached the dugout, it stopped again, then slowly began pulling the tarp-covered thing down into the darkness. I leaned forward instinctively, needing to see more. And that's when it happened. The figure paused mid-motion, and it turned its head. Not fully, just enough. Enough to know that it saw me. Even from that distance, I could feel the weight of its gaze, like ice crawling across my skin. I didn't see eyes, just the faint glint of something wet and wrong in the hollow of its face. It didn't make a sound, didn't shout or change course. It just stared, for maybe 5 seconds. Then, slowly, it turned back toward the dugout and continued dragging whatever it was carrying down the steps, vanishing into the dark like it had never been there. The doors closed behind it with a dull, final thud. I didn't move for a long time after that. Not until the sky started to lighten and the distant sound of traffic returned. When I finally stood, my knees almost gave out beneath me. I ran straight to the dugout. Don't ask me why. Some part of me needed to prove it was real, that I hadn't dreamed it. The grass was still dead in a line across the field. The doors, still locked, still rusted shut like they'd always been. I even tried pulling at them, feeling the old iron rattle uselessly in its hinges. There was no sign anyone had touched them. No drag marks, no tarp, nothing. But when I walked away, something followed me. I don't mean footsteps, I mean that feeling, that pressure, like I wasn't leaving alone. Like something had marked me just by watching. It's been 3 nights since then. I haven't gone back to Wrigley. I called in sick, twice. But last night, at exactly 4:44 a.m., my doorbell rang. Just once. I live in a third-floor apartment with a locked entry downstairs. No one should have been able to get up there. When I checked the peephole, the hallway was empty. But on the welcome mat, there was a patch of dead grass. Just a small circle, brittle and brown, like it had been cut out of the field itself. I didn't sleep. I just sat in the dark until the sun came up, trying to convince myself it was a coincidence. That maybe I tracked it in. That maybe I imagined. All of it. But tonight's another night, and I know what time it is now. I keep checking the clock. 4:10, 4:26, 4:38. I haven't opened the window blinds. I can't. Because I think something's standing on the fire escape. Waiting. If anyone reading this has ever worked the night shift at Wrigley, or anywhere like it, please tell me you've seen it too. Please tell me I'm not the only one. Because I'm starting to think whatever walks the field at 4:44 a.m. doesn't just stay at Wrigley anymore. The following events are based on a true story. Names and details have been altered to protect the identities of those involved, but the horror remains untouched. Watch at your own risk. Story 3. Location: Rodeo Drive, Beverly Hills, California. I always thought the night shift on Rodeo Drive would be easy money. I mean, it's Beverly Hills. What kind of danger happens in a boutique lined with handbags that cost more than my car? The streets are quiet after midnight, lit only by the soft glow of designer, signage, and the occasional limo creeping by. It was boring at first, the kind of boredom you get used to, until the knocking started. Always once, always at 2:09 a.m. It was so consistent I started expecting it. One sharp knock against the front. Glass door, like someone tapping a single finger with purpose. The first few nights I chalked it up to something mechanical. Maybe thermal expansion in the glass, a bird, whatever. I checked the security feed. Nothing. Not a soul outside, just an empty sidewalk glistening under the streetlights. But by the fifth night, I'd memorized the exact sound. Clean. Hollow. Too human. I mentioned it to my supervisor once, jokingly. He laughed and said I should be grateful it's not a drunk influencer trying to get in. But there was something about that knock. It wasn't random. It felt rehearsed. Like whoever or whatever was doing it knew I'd be listening. I started setting alarms on my phone at 2:08, just to be standing near the glass when it happened. And every time I'd stare out into the darkness. Nothing. No cars, no wind. Just that single deliberate knock. Curiosity turned into dread. I stopped sleeping during the day, obsessing over the footage, frame by frame. Still nothing. No shadows. No glitches, not even a stray leaf. It didn't make sense. By the seventh night, I stood inches from the door when it happened. I even pressed my forehead against the glass, convinced I'd catch a glimpse of something. But when the knock came, it was right in front of me. A sharp tap as if it came from the other side of the glass, but there was no one there. That night after the knock, I stayed by the door for nearly half an hour. I kept blinking, convinced my eyes were playing tricks on me. Then I checked the reflection in the glass. For a split second, I swear I saw something. Not someone. Something. Behind me, a figure. But when I turned around, the store was empty. It was probably my own reflection, distorted by the rain on the other side. That's what I told myself. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever I saw wasn't copying me exactly. 2 nights later, it rained. Not the soft coastal drizzle we usually get, but a full-on downpour. Streets were glossy black. Neon lights smeared in puddles. I felt tense all night. I don't know why, but I had this pressure in my chest like I was being timed. At exactly 2:08, I rushed to the door again, this time determined to fling it open the moment I heard the knock. I stood there, hand on the handle, heart thudding so loud I almost missed it. Then, tap. I yanked the door open. Cold rain hit me like a slap. The sidewalk was empty, but there, on the ground, right in front of the threshold, was a piece of paper soaked and clinging to the concrete. I hesitated before picking it up, my fingers trembling from more than just the cold. The ink had bled. from the water, but one line was still legible. I read it twice, then again, each time slower. "You saw my reflection yesterday. It wasn't yours." My mouth went dry. I backed into the store, holding the note like it might burn me. I don't know how long I stood there, just staring at the glass door. The street behind me was empty, yet I felt watched, studied even. I turned to check the mirror display near the cash register. Just me, or so I thought. I lifted my hand slowly. My reflection moved with me. Then it smiled. I didn't. I stumbled backward, knocking over a display stand. The sound echoed through the empty store like a gunshot. I didn't dare look back at the mirror. I just grabbed my phone and rewound the security footage to the exact moment I opened the door. Nothing. No figure, no note. Not even my own damn self walking out. Just the door swinging open on its own. And yet, the wet footprint I left on the tile was still there. I looked down at my boots. They were bone dry. I should have left. I should have called someone. But I stayed. I kept staring at the door, expecting the knock to happen again. And then, it did. Another single, precise tap. I checked the time. 2:09 a.m. again. My chest tightened. I slowly turned to face the glass door. The reflection showed the store behind me. But in the reflection, I was no longer alone. A second figure stood beside me. Tall, pale, featureless. And its hand was on my shoulder. I spun around, ready to scream or run or fight. Anything. But there was nothing. Just empty space and silence, broken only by the rain against the glass. I looked back at the door, and this time, I wasn't in the reflection, not at all. The store appeared empty in the glass. No shelves, no lights, no me. Just darkness, endless and black, as if the door no longer reflected this world but some other version of it. Something colder, something wrong. The security feed cut out at 2:10 a.m. The police found the store undisturbed. My phone was still charging behind the counter. Jacket on the chair, no signs of forced entry, no footprints outside. Just a single crumpled note at the door, barely readable under the dried rain. He saw what wasn't his. He stayed. They say I vanished without a trace. But if you ever find yourself walking past that storefront late, at night, especially in the rain, don't stop. And if you hear one knock, don't look. The following events are based on a true story. Names and details have been altered to protect the identities of those involved, but the horror remains. Untouched. Watch at your own risk. Story 4. Location: French Quarter, New Orleans, Louisiana. I used to think the weirdest part of working night shifts at a boutique hotel in the French Quarter was the tourists. Drunk, loud, and overly eager to hear about ghost stories they didn't believe in. But lately, it's not the guests that keep me up at night. It's the music. Old jazz, muffled and scratchy like it's playing from a dusty vinyl. It starts at exactly 1:06 a.m. every night, drifting through the street like smoke. The first time I heard it, I thought someone was just throwing a themed party. Now I know better. There's no party, just a collapsed storefront across the street that no one wants to talk about. I've been the night porter here for 5 years. It's a quiet gig, mostly. The kind of job where the silence can start pressing in if you let your mind wander too much. I usually just kill time at the front desk, scrolling or reading while the world outside sleeps. But ever since that first night I heard the music, I can't relax. The tune always sounds the same. Slow, low saxophone, a lazy piano following. Just behind it, like it's crawling its way through time. The building it's coming from used to be a record store, apparently. Or that's what the faded lettering above the burnt awning says. But every local I've asked just shakes their head and tells me it's been gone since a fire in the 80s. At first I tried to rationalize it. Maybe some squatter set up a speaker in the rubble. Maybe it was a prank or some atmospheric trick, bouncing sound off the old walls. But I couldn't find any speakers, and the music never came from anywhere around the building. It came from inside it. I started stepping outside when it began, leaning on the railing with a coffee in hand, pretending to enjoy the breeze. But every time the music sounded richer, closer, like the instruments were just behind those crumbling walls. playing for no one but me. One night I asked Marcy, the hotel's housekeeper who's been around since the 70s, if she remembered that shop across the street. Her face stiffened before I even finished the question. "Don't go poking around there," she muttered, not meeting my eyes. "That place was cursed long before the fire." I laughed, thinking she was just humoring the whole New Orleans. Spooky vibe. But she didn't smile. She just walked away like I'd said something disgusting. That's when I started keeping a notebook by the front desk. I began logging every time the music played, what the weather was like, what song it seemed to be. And one night I noticed something that made my stomach tighten. The tune was always the same, but the tempo kept slowing down. The tempo change was slight at first, just enough to make the saxophone feel tired, as if the music itself was struggling to keep going. I double-checked my notes, even timed it with a stopwatch. Each night the melody dragged just a bit more. By the end of that week, it sounded like the instruments were being played underwater, warped, stretched, too slow for any human to keep rhythm. I tried recording it on my phone, but the audio never picked anything up, just static. And when I played it back, I swore I heard my own voice in the background whispering something I couldn't quite understand. I stopped listening from the doorway. It felt too exposed. Instead, I stayed just inside the lobby, lights dimmed, listening from behind the glass. But even then, I started feeling like someone was watching me back. Not from the street, not from any window, from inside that gutted store. I couldn't see anything in the darkness over there, but the sensation was heavy, like a weight on my chest, like eyes on the back of my neck. It became harder to concentrate during my shifts. The guests seemed distant. Conversations felt hollow. Every night I told myself I wouldn't listen. And every night I stood there at 1:06 a.m., listening anyway. It all escalated last Thursday. A guest came down late, maybe around 1:20 a.m., asking if we could turn the music off outside. He looked annoyed, a little spooked. I asked him what music he meant. He blinked, confused. "The jazz," he said. "It's loud, like really loud." I stepped outside with him. There was nothing, not a sound. The street was dead silent. He gave me a weird look, mumbled something about being tired, and went back upstairs. But the moment I closed the door behind me, I heard it. Again. Not louder, not distorted. Just clear, as if the store was wide open and the band was playing by candlelight inside. That was the first time I wondered if it was me. If maybe I'd been awake too many nights in a row. If the silence and the dark were finally getting to me. I told myself I'd ignore it from now on. Let the ghost band play. Let the cursed ruins rot. But of course I didn't. The next night, I cracked the front door open just a few inches at 1:05, waited, and listened. When the music started, it was soft, almost beautiful again. A kind of sad, slow swing. But then I saw it. A glow. Dim, flickering amber, like candlelight or firelight, dancing behind the blown-out windows across the street. And for just a second, I swear I saw a silhouette behind the glass. I couldn't sleep when my shift ended. I just sat on the hotel steps until sunrise, watching that empty lot. No light, no figure, no trace of anything by morning. I told Marcy again, told her I saw someone inside. She didn't flinch. She just said, "Then you've already gone too far." That stuck with me all day. By the time I came back for my next shift, I'd made up my mind. I needed to see it. Not through windows. Not from the safety of the lobby. I needed to step inside and prove to myself that it was nothing. That it was just rubble and shadows, and my own tired brain playing tricks on me. At 1:04 a.m., I crossed the street. The air felt thicker over there, like humidity mixed with dust. The closer I got, the colder I felt. Not from wind or temperature, just this absence of warmth. The storefront was blackened and broken, but the frame still stood. I ducked under what was left of the doorframe, expecting to step into a pile of charred wood and shattered glass. But inside, it was whole. Not modern, not clean, like stepping into a memory. Shelves lined with dusty records. A brass lamp glowing on the counter. The floor polished and warm underfoot. And behind the counter stood a man. or something like one. He didn't move, just stood there behind the counter, head tilted slightly, like he'd been waiting. His suit was outdated, the kind of sharp-tailored style from the 40s with a crisp handkerchief in his breast pocket. But his face was wrong, too smooth, like clay still waiting to be shaped. No eyes, just indentations where they should have been. I froze. The music played louder in there, not from a speaker but from the old phonograph spinning behind him, its horn vibrating with impossible sound. I couldn't tell how long I stood there. Maybe seconds, maybe longer. Then his head tilted the other way, sharp, mechanical, and everything went dark. I woke up on the floor behind the front desk, my shirt soaked in sweat and my hands black with soot. It was 4:37 a.m. The door was locked. No one had seen me leave. No one had come in. I checked the cameras, static from 1:04 to 1:09 a.m. The street across from the hotel looked the same as always. Broken, empty, ruined. I haven't told anyone else. I've tried convincing myself it was a dream, but every night since at 1:06 a.m., the music plays. And sometimes I swear I hear footsteps behind the desk. Slow, deliberate, like someone's waiting for me. To listen again. The following events are based on a true story. Names and details have been altered to protect the identities of those involved, but the horror remains untouched. Watch at your own risk. Story 5. Location: Seattle Public Library. Central Library, Seattle, Washington. I used to love the silence, that thick, almost sacred stillness that settles over the Seattle Central Library after midnight. It was my favorite part of the job. While most janitors rushed to finish their shift, I stretched mine out, finding something comforting in the way the city fell asleep around all that glass and steel. But last Tuesday, something broke that peace. At 3:03 a.m., just as I was emptying the bins on level 5, I noticed a soft glow coming from beneath a door labeled Service Access Only, No Entry. The weird part? That door doesn't lead anywhere. Or at least it's not supposed to. I've worked night shifts in that building for 4 years. I know every hallway, every fire exit, every maintenance hatch. That door wedged into a corner, past the elevators, has been locked and ignored for as long as I can remember. But there was no mistaking it this time. The light clearly seeped through the narrow gap between the floor and the bottom of the door. A warm, steady yellow, like an old desk lamp. I waited a few seconds, expecting it to flicker out. It didn't. I even walked down to check the breaker panels, nothing out of place. When I asked the building manager the next morning, he just laughed. "There's no basement in this library," he said. "That whole sub-level was sealed off. In the 80s. I tried to ignore it after that, I really did. But once you notice something that shouldn't be there, it starts to eat at you. Over the next few nights, I made a point to pass by that door at 3:03 a.m., pretending I was just cleaning nearby. And every single time, the light was on. Never earlier, never later. Always at exactly 3:03, I started checking the clocks obsessively, waiting for that minute to tick by. I even recorded it once on my phone, but when I played it back later, the screen was black and the timestamp was corrupted. Sleep became harder, not because I was afraid, at least not then, but because I couldn't shake the feeling that something was being shown to me on purpose, like a whisper behind a wall. I started researching the building's history in my off hours. Nothing specific turned up except a few old blueprints archived online, which did show a lower level, unfinished, with annotations scribbled out in red. One document, dated 1983, had a handwritten note next to the basement layout. "Do not reopen." Documentation archived, access restricted. No reason given, no digital version available. I asked a librarian friend if they'd ever been below ground. She gave me a weird look and said, "What basement?" That was when I started noticing. The door was changing. One night I found it slightly ajar, though I'd checked it twice earlier and it had been shut tight. The next night the handle was warm to the touch, almost uncomfortably so. There was no ventilation down there, no heat source that could explain it. I even started placing tiny strips of masking tape across the seam where the door met the frame. They were always peeled back or missing by morning. I asked security if they had any footage of that hallway, but they told me, flatly, that that corridor wasn't covered by any of the building's cameras. Budget cuts, they said. The night I decided to open it, I didn't really plan to. I brought a set of old utility keys just in case. But deep down, I think I knew none of them would work. At 3:03 a.m., the light came on, same as always. This time, the door wasn't just unlocked. It creaked open on its own when I touched it. I stood there for a long moment, breathing in something thick and musty, like wet paper and burned dust. It wasn't like any basement I'd ever smelled. I clicked on my flashlight, stepped inside, and gently pulled the door shut behind me. My first thought was, this place shouldn't exist. The air was heavy, like it hadn't moved in decades. The stairs creaked under my weight, coated in a fine layer of dust that seemed to absorb sound. At the bottom, I found a long hallway lined with bookshelves. But these weren't like the ones upstairs. These were older, darker, made of some kind of heavy wood that smelled faintly metallic. The books were all bound in the same dull gray material, no titles on the spines. Just rows, and rows of them neatly arranged. Some shelves went as high as the ceiling, others had collapsed in on themselves. The strangest part? A single desk lamp at the far end, casting that same yellow glow I'd seen from outside the door. I moved slowly, brushing my hand across one of the books. It was warm, not like it had been sitting near a heat source, more like body heat, like something recently alive. I pulled it off the shelf and opened it to the first page. It had a date, April 14th, 2025, just 2 days ago. Underneath were lines and lines of text, printed in a neat mechanical typeface. It described a man entering a hidden level of a public library, right down to the creaky stairs and the smell of burned dust. My breath caught. The next page described, the moment I picked up the book, I flipped ahead, hands shaking, scanning through paragraphs that hadn't happened yet. Page after page, it followed me. Every movement, every breath, the rustling of my jacket as I turned around. The flicker of doubt when I thought I heard someone behind me. And then, a line I hadn't yet lived. He drops the book when he sees his name carved into the desk. I looked up. The desk under the lamp, smooth, dark wood, had something etched into its surface. I stepped closer. My name. Full name. First, middle, last, cut deep, like someone had been carving it for years. That's when I heard the soft thud of a book falling behind me. I wasn't holding anything anymore. I turned around. Another book had appeared, open on the floor, its pages fluttering in a breeze I couldn't feel. I picked it up without thinking. The date was tomorrow, April 19th, 2025. It was shorter than the first one, barely 10 pages. My eyes scanned the final paragraph. It described me running back up the stairs, breathless, reaching for the door, finding it gone. Not locked, not jammed, just not there anymore. I dropped the book again, heart pounding so hard it felt like it echoed through the shelves. I backed away from the desk, from the books, from the warmth that now felt suffocating. The hallway behind me looked longer than before, and darker. I ran. I don't remember making the decision. I was just moving, feet slamming against the steps, flashlight beam jerking wildly in front of me. But the stairs seemed longer now. The walls, different, lined with bookshelves that hadn't been there before. Books vibrated faintly as I passed them, humming with a low frequency that made my teeth ache. I reached the top and slammed into the door, only it wasn't a door anymore. Just smooth concrete as if the entrance had never existed. I screamed, pounded with my fists. The flashlight flickered, then died. I don't know how long I was down there. I woke up in the staff lounge, slumped on the couch, uniform covered in dust that smelled like ashes and mold. Security says they found me passed out in the hallway near the archives. No sublevel in sight. No strange door. Nothing. But every night since, I wake up at exactly 3:03 a.m., heart racing. And on my nightstand, where I never leave anything, There's always a single gray book, a new one, blank, until I open it. Last night, it ended with this sentence. He posts his story online hoping someone will believe him before it's too late. Please, tell me I'm not the only one.